What if your body has been waiting, not for medicine, not for time, but for your own words to command it to rise, restore, and regenerate? Tonight you will discover the spoken law that turns mere language into living power. And once you hear this, you will never speak to yourself the same way again. Most engaging part plus reason to watch till the end. Every cell in your body is listening, responding, and reorganizing itself according to the words you speak and the images you hold in your mind. There is a law, ancient, precise, unchanging, that states, what you speak with feeling becomes flesh, becomes function, becomes form. Your body does not argue, it obeys. Your subconscious mind does not question, it accepts. And tonight, you are going to learn how to speak in a way that activates healing, restoration, and renewal from the inside out. Stay until the end, because once you understand this spoken law, once you know how to plant the right command into the silent workshop of your mind, you will realize you are not a victim of your body. You are the architect of it. Most people speak sickness, fear, decline, and they wonder why their body mirrors those words. But if you stay through every keynote of this message, you will learn the exact process to reverse years of internal damage, emotional wounds, and subconscious scripts that have silently shaped your health. Your spoken words imprint instructions onto the subconscious mind, shaping the state of your body through a law that works constantly, silently, and without interruption. The moment you speak anything with feeling, certainty, or repetition, your subconscious begins to absorb it as a directive, treating every word as a seed that must grow after its kind. The body does not respond to random thinking, it responds to the emotionalized thoughts and spoken commands that bypass the surface mind and enter the deeper creative dimension of consciousness. When you understand that every word carries an energetic signature, a frequency, and a blueprint, you begin to realize that your language is not simply descriptive, it is generative. It creates patterns within your nervous system, instructions within the immune system, and impulses within the brain that then translate into physical outcomes. The subconscious mind, being the unseen governor of the body, does not evaluate or argue with your words. It does not analyze whether the statements are good or bad, helpful or harmful, healing or destructive. Its role is to take whatever you speak with conviction and translate it into muscular, cellular, and biochemical activity. If you say, I am exhausted, I am weak, I am in pain, I am getting worse, the subconscious records these words as commands and instructs the body to produce more exhaustion, more weakness, more pain, and more decline. This is why the very language people casually use becomes the invisible author of their health outcomes. The power of spoken words lies not in their sound, but in the impressions they make on your inner mind. If your words are spoken with emotion, they become magnified. Emotion accelerates manifestation because it is the substance the subconscious understands. When you say, I feel stronger every day, but speak it with no emotion or belief, the subconscious may accept it slowly. But if you say it with intensity, with feeling, with a sense of inner certainty, the impression becomes powerful enough to alter the physical processes of the body. Emotion is the electricity that powers the spoken command, and repetition is the wire that carries it into the depths of the subconscious. When you repeatedly speak health, strength, vitality, regeneration, and restoration, your subconscious begins to rearrange the body to match those commands. It stimulates healing responses, accelerates repair, balances the systems of the body, and energizes areas that have been weakened by stress, fear, or negative suggestion. Through your spoken words, you are constantly instructing your subconscious mind about what to create next in your body. Your words are the architects of internal chemistry. If a person continually speaks about sickness, disease, limitations, or decline, the subconscious begins to produce the corresponding chemicals, hormones, and neurological patterns that align with those statements. The immune system weakens under negative declarations because the body interprets them as a signal of threat or deterioration. In the same way, the immune system strengthens under words of healing because the body interprets them as signals of safety, restoration, and vitality. Spoken words create mental images, and those images shape your biological responses. If someone says, "My back is killing me," the mind forms an image of deterioration and pain, and the body reacts as if that image is true. But if you say, "My back is healing right now," the subconscious forms an image of restoration, and the body begins to reorganize tissues and nerves to match that command. When you speak words of health, the subconscious mind begins to release instructions that influence the autonomic nervous system. Heart rate changes, breathing deepens, blood pressure adjusts, the digestive system begins to balance itself, and the endocrine system responds by releasing hormones that support healing and vitality. The subconscious controls these systems automatically, and your words give it the direction to follow. This means that your spoken language can interrupt a negative physical pattern and initiate a positive one. It can reverse stress responses, dissolve tension, and trigger relaxation, which is the state where the body heals most efficiently. Even chronic pain can be influenced by spoken commands when repeated often enough with emotion, because the brain begins to reorganize neural pathways according to the new verbal instructions. The body is essentially the expression of the subconscious mind. What is impressed on the subconscious is expressed in the body. Your words are not empty, they are formative. They are the molds into which the subconscious pours the substance of life. Your health is in many ways a reflection of the dominant words you have spoken for years. When you change your words, you change the signals your subconscious receives, and the body must follow. This is why conscious speech becomes a form of self-healing. By speaking words of restoration daily, you overwrite old patterns of fear, illness, and limitation. You create new internal scripts that the subconscious uses to rebuild the body. And over time, these new verbal commands become the dominant instructions for the body to follow. The spoken word is a form of internal coding. It programs the subconscious in a way similar to how software programs a computer. Whatever instructions you enter consistently become the operating system of your mind and body. When you speak with intention, you activate a deeper mechanism within the subconscious, a mechanism that responds to clarity and direction. The subconscious loves certainty. It acts quickly when given a definite command. Statements like "I am healing," "My body is restoring itself," and "every cell in me is responding to divine order" create precise instructions that the subconscious can execute. Vague statements do not influence the body as powerfully as clear, specific declarations. The more definite your spoken words, the more definite the results. This is because the subconscious organizes itself around clear mental and verbal patterns. Your spoken words shape your beliefs, and your beliefs shape your physiological reality. Every time you speak health, you strengthen your internal belief in healing. Belief amplifies the spoken word, and the spoken word reinforces the belief. This creates a cycle that accelerates restoration. When you repeatedly declare a truth about your body, even if you do not yet see it, the subconscious begins to treat it as established fact. And once the subconscious accepts something as fact, the body begins to shift to match that inner truth. This is why consistent, intentional, emotionally charged speech becomes the key to changing the state of the body from the inside out. Every cell responds to emotionalized speech, reorganizing itself according to the dominant command you repeat, because the body is not a separate mechanical structure but a living, intelligent system that constantly listens to the directives you impress upon it. Each cell contains memory, awareness, and an innate responsiveness to the mind that governs it. This responsiveness is not symbolic, it is literal. The language you speak becomes the vibrational environment in which your cells operate. When your words are filled with fear, doubt, hopelessness, frustration, or anger, the cellular environment contracts. The cells tighten, communication between them becomes restricted, and the natural processes of repair and regeneration slow down. The body then reflects the emotional tone of the speech you have been repeating, because emotion amplifies the spoken directive and stamps it deeply into the cellular consciousness. Emotionalized speech becomes the instruction manual from which your cells begin to operate. They reorganize themselves according to the dominant emotional command, whether that command supports healing or hinders it. This is why people who repeatedly speak of illness or decline often experience worsening symptoms. The cells are not malfunctioning, they are obeying the emotional tone of the spoken word. Words spoken with fear create a cellular environment of stress, and stress triggers inflammatory responses, irritates nerves, disrupts hormone balance, and reduces the immune system's efficiency. The body is always mirroring the emotion behind the words, not just the words themselves. You cannot say, "I'm fine," while internally feeling despair and expect the cells to respond to the spoken phrase alone. The subconscious responds to the emotional undercurrent, the feeling tone, the vibration embedded in the statement. When the emotion and the spoken word align, the cellular response becomes powerful and immediate. If you say, "I am healing," with genuine hope, relief, faith, or gratitude, the cells begin to reorganize in a direction that matches that emotionalized command. This is because cells function as receivers of mental and emotional energy. They interpret emotion as instruction. Every thought produces a biochemical response, and every emotionally charged word amplifies that response. For example, when you speak words of peace, calmness, and inner strength with genuine emotional involvement, your body releases neurotransmitters that soothe the nervous system, hormones that promote healing, and signals that repair tissue. When you speak words of fear or discouragement, the body produces stress chemicals that weaken the immune system, constrict blood vessels, and disrupt the flow of energy. The emotionalized word is therefore the switch that determines whether your body enters a state of healing or a state of deterioration. This is why deliberate, emotionally aligned speech is one of the most powerful healing tools available to you. Your cells understand the emotional message behind your words more clearly than the words themselves. They respond immediately because emotion changes the frequency of your entire being, and the body reorganizes to match that frequency. The dominant command you repeat becomes the default operating program of your body. If your dominant speech revolves around strength, vitality, growth, and restoration, the cells begin to multiply and regenerate in accordance with that pattern. They reorganize themselves to match the emotional energy behind those words. Healing accelerates when the emotional tone is one of hope or gratitude. Gratitude especially sends a powerful signal through the body that reorganizes cells toward balance and coherence. When you say, "Thank you for my healing," the body responds because gratitude is one of the most harmonizing emotional vibrations available. Gratitude calms the brain, softens the nervous system, and opens communication between cells, allowing them to work together more efficiently. Cells flourish in an environment of positive emotional energy and deteriorate in an environment of negative emotional energy. This is a fundamental law of mind-body interaction. Your cells are constantly being replaced: skin cells, blood cells, tissue cells, intestinal lining cells. They are born from the blueprint held within your subconscious mind, and they take shape according to the instructions the mind receives. When you repeatedly speak emotionalized declarations of health, each new generation of cells forms under the influence of those declarations. This means that restoration is not only possible, it is natural when you feed the mind with the right emotional speech. Healing is not a battle. It is a process of giving the body the emotional environment it needs to reorganize itself. The spoken word gives direction, emotion gives power. Together, they form the blueprint that the cells follow. Many people unknowingly speak commands that weaken their cellular structure. Statements like, "I can't take this anymore," "My health is declining," "I always get sick," or "Nothing works for me" become emotional declarations that inform the subconscious of what to produce next. The cells sense the emotional tone of resignation or fear and reorganize accordingly. If you repeatedly declare lack of strength, the body reduces energy because the mind has instructed it to. If you repeatedly declare vulnerability, the immune system weakens. But when you shift your speech and emotional tone to empowerment, statements like, "My body knows how to heal," "Every cell is responding to divine order," "I grow stronger every day," or "Life is flowing through me with power," the cells reorganize into patterns that support regeneration. The body listens faithfully to what you repeatedly say with emotion. Emotion creates resonance. When you speak words of healing with conviction, the entire body begins to resonate with that frequency. Cells communicate through light, sound, and electromagnetic signals. and emotionalized words act like tuning forks that realign the entire system. This is why one powerful declaration spoken with deep feeling can have more healing impact than repeating empty words thousands of times. It is the depth of emotion behind the declaration that imprints itself on the cellular structure. Your cells obey the vibration you produce. When that vibration is aligned with healing, the body naturally reorganizes into harmony. When the vibration is aligned with fear or despair, the body reorganizes into imbalance. The spoken word, infused with emotion, is therefore the architect of cellular coherence. Repetition is what makes the cellular pattern permanent. When you speak the same emotionalized command day after day, the cells begin to lock into that new instruction. The body eventually accepts it as the new normal. This is how chronic conditions can be reversed, by replacing the old emotional pattern with a new one through consistent speech. Your repeated emotional declarations become the master program of your biology. The cells learn from your words, remember your emotions, and reorganize to express the pattern you imprint through consistent, emotionally charged speech. Healing is activated when your words, emotions, and inner imagery align toward restoration instead of fear, because the subconscious mind requires unity of impression before it can produce a corresponding physical result. When your spoken words declare health but your emotions vibrate with fear, and your inner imagery is filled with sickness or decline, the subconscious receives conflicting instructions and cannot initiate a coherent healing response. The subconscious responds to the dominant pattern, not the scattered intention. This is why true healing begins not with a single element, speech, emotion, or imagination, but with the fusion of all three into one harmonious command that penetrates the deeper levels of consciousness. When your spoken word affirms healing, and your emotions feel the reality of that healing, and your imagination visualizes the body already restored, the subconscious mind receives the impression as a completed state and begins to reproduce it in the physical body. The alignment of these three elements generates a potency that none of them can achieve on their own. Spoken words alone can have limited effect if the internal imagery contradicts them. For example, a person may say, "I am healthy," while inwardly picturing themselves weak, sick, or deteriorating. The subconscious accepts the image more readily than the words, because imagery is the language of the deeper mind. Emotion magnifies whichever input is strongest. So if the imagery of decline is powerful, and the emotion behind it is fear, the subconscious will obey that emotionalized picture over the spoken affirmation. This explains why many people speak healing words, but do not see healing results. Their internal imagery and emotional atmosphere cancel out the affirmations. The subconscious cannot produce health from a divided impression. It requires clarity, unity, and consistency. Healing law operates through harmony, not conflict. When you bring your imagery into alignment with your spoken words, you give the subconscious a blueprint it can follow. If you speak, "My body is healing," and you imagine every cell glowing with strength, order, and balance, you provide a mental picture that supports the verbal command. The subconscious now has something definite to work with. But the process becomes even more powerful when you add emotion, when you feel the relief of being healed, when you feel gratitude for restoration, when you feel the lightness and comfort of a strong, balanced body. Emotion is the fuel. Imagery is the blueprint. Spoken words are the command. When these elements merge, they send a clear directive to the subconscious that bypasses all resistance and begins to manifest physically. This is the reason that people who suddenly experience deep emotional breakthroughs often see rapid healing. The emotional shift aligns with their spoken desire and inner imagery, creating an immediate change in subconscious activity. The imagination plays a crucial role in this process because the subconscious accepts imagined experiences as real. If you visualize a healing light flowing through your body, repairing tissues, calming nerves, balancing cells, the subconscious takes that imagery as a genuine event and begins to adjust the body accordingly. The nervous system responds, the immune system strengthens, and the endocrine system releases hormones that support regeneration. This is why athletes rehearse physically without moving, using only their imagination, and their bodies respond as if they had practiced in real life. The subconscious does not distinguish between imagination and physical experience. It only responds to the clarity and intensity of the internal image. When you use this power deliberately to visualize healing, you imprint a pattern that the body must express. Emotion deepens the imprint because feeling is the language of the subconscious. When you feel something intensely, the subconscious accepts it instantly. If you combine spoken words with strong fear, the body deteriorates. If you combine spoken words with strong faith, gratitude, or joy, the body heals. The emotion behind the words determines the direction of manifestation. A fearful thought with strong emotion becomes a physical symptom. A healing affirmation with strong emotion becomes a physical improvement. This is the fundamental law behind mind-body healing. The subconscious obeys the emotionalized idea, not the empty statement. Therefore, when you speak your healing words, allow yourself to soften, breathe, and enter an emotional tone that matches the state you desire. Feel the comfort of strength. Feel the ease of balance. Feel the joy of well-being. Emotion makes the affirmation alive. When your words, imagery, and emotions are aligned, you enter a state of inner coherence. In this state, the heart, brain, and nervous system synchronize. The mind becomes calm. The body enters recovery mode, and the healing processes accelerate. Scientific studies show that coherent emotional states like gratitude, peace, and appreciation create harmony in the autonomic nervous system, improve immune function, and support cellular regeneration. When you consciously create this emotional state while affirming healing, you amplify the effects dramatically. Your body begins to reorganize itself because every system receives a unified instruction. There is no contradiction, no confusion, no interference, only one clear, powerful command: restore. This alignment also dissolves subconscious blocks to healing. Many people unknowingly hold inner resistance: fear of getting well, beliefs of unworthiness, memories of trauma, feelings of guilt. These hidden patterns weaken the healing response because they contradict the desire for health. But when you create a strong emotional and imaginal experience of restoration, these old patterns lose their power. The subconscious begins to prioritize the new dominant impression. The healing image becomes stronger than the memory of illness. The healing emotion becomes stronger than the fear. The healing word becomes stronger than the doubt. Over time, this alignment rewires the subconscious, and the body follows. The spoken word acts as the trigger that activates this alignment. When you speak healing words daily, you signal the subconscious to focus on health. When you visualize health at the same time, you provide the picture. When you feel the emotion of health, you supply the energy. This trinity forms the engine of restoration. And the more consistently you practice this alignment, the faster the subconscious transforms the physical body. The body is always trying to match the dominant emotional, imaginal, spoken pattern. When that pattern is healing, the body must heal. When that pattern is fear, the body must deteriorate. You are the one who determines the pattern through repetition, focus, and feeling. As you continue to align your words, imagination, and emotional state with restoration, the subconscious begins to shift your physical reality. Pain lessens, energy increases, balance returns, and the body finds its natural rhythm. The healing law is simple but profound. The body follows the mind. When the mind is unified, the body restores itself. Healing is not forced. It unfolds naturally when the internal command is clear. This is why alignment is the key. The moment your words, emotions, and imagination point in the same direction, healing begins to move swiftly through your entire being. The subconscious mind accepts repeated statements as truth and expresses them through chemical, hormonal, and physical changes because it functions as the silent operator of the body, constantly organizing, regulating, and responding to the impressions it receives. Unlike the conscious mind, which can debate, question, or resist ideas, the subconscious does not analyze. It simply obeys and executes. Every statement you repeat, every phrase you emotionally charge, every declaration you focus on enters the subconscious and begins to shape internal reality. This is why affirmations are so effective. They bypass the critical reasoning of the conscious mind and impress directly upon the subconscious. which then translates them into physical patterns. Over time, repeated statements become dominant impressions, and the body begins to respond accordingly. If you consistently affirm health, vitality, strength, and energy, your subconscious interprets these statements as commands to reorganize every system toward that desired state. If, on the other hand, you repeat words of weakness, sickness, or limitation, the subconscious receives the same instruction to produce illness or dysfunction, and the body must obey because it cannot distinguish between imagined reality and spoken truth. Chemical changes are the first layer of manifestation. Words repeated with belief and emotion alter the secretion of hormones and neurotransmitters, adjusting the body's internal chemistry to match the dominant mental instruction. For instance, affirmations of calm, peace, or confidence can lower stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, reducing inflammation and promoting cellular repair. Conversely, repeated statements of anxiety, fear, or tension increase stress chemicals, suppress immune function, and create a fertile environment for disease. The subconscious communicates with the endocrine system to coordinate these changes, ensuring that the physical body reflects the mental and verbal reality it has received. The more emotionally charged and repeated the statement, the stronger the chemical and hormonal response, because emotion acts as a multiplier of the instruction's power. The nervous system also responds to repeated statements. Every declaration you make, every internal repetition, influences neural pathways in the brain. The subconscious, which governs the autonomic nervous system, interprets repeated instructions as commands that must be implemented automatically. This means heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and muscle tone can all be affected by verbal repetition. Over time, habitual speech patterns and thoughts literally shape neural architecture, strengthening pathways associated with either health and vitality or illness and limitation. The subconscious does not debate, it merely executes the pattern you supply. If your repeated statements are positive, the brain reorganizes neural connections to reflect resilience, coordination, and efficiency. If your repeated statements are negative, the nervous system reinforces stress pathways, muscular tension, and fatigue. In this way, the subconscious ensures that your physical body is a direct expression of your dominant internal dialogues. The immune system is especially sensitive to repeated statements. Your subconscious interprets the dominant verbal and emotional patterns as the blueprint for defense or vulnerability. Positive, healing statements trigger a cascade of biochemical responses that strengthen immunity, increase cellular repair, and balance inflammation. Negative statements repeated over time produce the opposite effect, weakening defenses and leaving the body more susceptible to illness. Because the subconscious mind accepts repetition as reality, the body gradually aligns with whatever message you emphasize. Consistency is therefore essential. One fleeting positive statement may be ignored or overridden by habitual negative speech, but repeated affirmation, reinforced by emotion and mental imagery, creates an unshakable impression that the subconscious interprets as fact, and the body begins to express that fact physically. Repetition also enhances visualization. When you repeat statements consistently, the subconscious begins to form clear mental images associated with those words. The combination of verbal repetition and mental imagery produces a powerful resonance that drives chemical, neurological, and cellular changes in the body. The subconscious perceives these repeated images as reality, triggering responses that mirror the imagined state. For instance, repeatedly stating every cell in my body is healthy and vibrant while visualizing glowing, strong cells signals the subconscious to align biochemical and physiological processes with that visualization. The more detailed and emotionally infused the mental picture, the stronger the effect, because the subconscious responds to the totality of the impression, word, image, and feeling. This is the reason why repeated, emotionally charged affirmations produce measurable changes in physical health over time. The body itself begins to express the repeated statements through subtle, and then more obvious, changes. Muscular tension, posture, energy levels, digestion, and sleep patterns all reflect the dominant messages impressed upon the subconscious. When statements of health and vitality are repeated consistently, the muscles relax, circulation improves, digestion functions more efficiently, and sleep becomes restorative. Hormonal balance is gradually restored, the immune system becomes more resilient, and cellular repair mechanisms operate more effectively. On the other hand, habitual repetition of words of weakness or limitation produces fatigue, impaired function, and delayed healing because the subconscious interprets the repeated pattern as an internal order for decline. This demonstrates the absolute fidelity of the subconscious mind to repeated statements. It does not question, it does not doubt, it simply executes the instructions it receives as truth. The spoken law of repetition also creates emotional reinforcement. Each time you repeat a positive statement, you strengthen the internal belief that it is true, and this belief further amplifies the effect of the repetition on the subconscious. The subconscious accepts belief as reality, so the combination of repetition, emotion, and belief forms a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you repeat statements of health, strength, and restoration, the more deeply the subconscious accepts them, the more intensely it organizes the body to reflect them, and the more your conscious mind begins to feel and recognize the physical changes. This feedback loop accelerates transformation because the subconscious responds both to the repetition of words and to the emotional certainty they create. Consistency and precision in repetition are crucial. The subconscious does not respond to scattered, confused, or hesitant statements. It responds powerfully to repeated, confident declarations made with emotional engagement. The more definite the statement, the more focused the intention, and the more emotionally energized the speech, the more rapidly the subconscious executes the instruction. It organizes chemical, neurological, and cellular responses in alignment with the repeated statements. Over time, the repeated statements become dominant impressions, shaping physical reality without conscious effort. Habits, long-term health patterns, and even tendencies toward chronic illness can be redirected through disciplined repetition of positive, emotionally charged, and imagery-supported statements. This is why affirmations, mantras, and verbal declarations are powerful tools for restoration. The subconscious mind perceives repetition as a signal of importance. Whatever is repeated consistently is prioritized and treated as essential information that must be acted upon. Words, when repeated with feeling and intent, become internal commands that organize the mind-body system. The physical body, operating as the manifestation of subconscious instructions, gradually conforms to the dominant repeated patterns. Cells, tissues, organs, and systems reorganize themselves in alignment with the mental and verbal blueprint, producing chemical and hormonal changes, strengthening immunity, optimizing function, and promoting overall health. The effect of repeated statements is cumulative. A single statement may produce a minor effect, but repeated daily with focus and emotional engagement, it creates a dominant impression that reshapes both mind and body. The subconscious, accepting these impressions as fact, translates them into continuous physical expression, reinforcing the repeated pattern and producing measurable, observable changes. Through repetition, you create an internal environment in which health, vitality, and balance are natural outcomes because the subconscious mind obeys the repeated commands as absolute truth.